Today on the Dance Rule podcast, I'm speaking with John English, co-director of Unbound, a documentary about ballerinas who were also abuse survivors from the ballet world. They walk out on toxic companies and start a radical, inclusive, supportive new company of their own. Led by a gender-fluid ballet insurgent, they fight to reclaim the stage. To succeed, they must start from nothing. They must face their past traumas, fight for justice, and find belief to dance again with defiance and joy. This episode was sponsored by Master Dancer Mindset. Know yourself, be yourself, and express yourself on and off the stage. Welcome to the Dance Reel podcast. I'm Kate Histon. Before we dive into this episode, I would love a favour from you. To help us bring some wonderful guests to our show and grow, please subscribe or follow this channel, like, comment, and share with a friend. That would be a great help. Thank you so much. Welcome, John, to my podcast. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing what you have been doing.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have just spent, the last 5 years creating a documentary. Can you tell us all about it?
Unbound is a story of a group of dancers who had faced abuse and mistreatment in the ballet world, and they decided to fight back. They had been victims and survivors of abuse from as young as 11, 12 years old at ballet school. They then found themselves as young adults in equally abusive and toxic dance company, and they decided that enough was enough. And they were scared that they would never get a job anywhere else because you have to stick to the code of silence in ballet. But the way that they decided to solve that was to set up their own company and fight back and reclaim the stage. And obviously, that's an incredible story, but it's nice in principle. But setting up your own ballet company with no history, reputation, money, or experience is a completely different prospect to take on. So the film follows the ups and very much the downs as well of them trying to do that and trying to fight back and reclaim the stage and their spaces and their rights as dancers, whilst dealing with all the physical and emotional and logistical stresses of trying to set up a company, and then all the creative ones of putting on their first ever performance, a Nutcracker as well, and doing all of that whilst carrying the trauma of what they'd experienced before and fighting through that.
Oh my goodness. I love hearing this, and it's so sad at the same time, but so liberating. And what drew you to document their story? And when did you realize the film would center on harm, survival, and agency in the ballet culture?
Well, I think something that we always try to do at Otoxia Productions, which is our company, is we always try to tell stories of defiant hope, of resistance through joy. And we run a training program for emerging talent called the Industry Program. And young emerging filmmakers with a huge amount of talent, they come and join us and they work with us for a year in our productions, and they train with us at the same time. And these young people bring so much energy and passion. And when together, they were getting their training about how to find stories, and they were such an energetic, passionate, young group of people. And when they found this other incredibly talented, artistic, passionate, young group of survivors filled with hope and filled with joy despite everything they'd been through, the cohesion of those two things just felt really, really special. And we knew that we had to make that story. And I think we were just blessed in the fact that our production company is based in Barcelona, and this company, despite having dancers from all over the world, had chosen Barcelona as their base, and they became Ballet de Barcelona.
Wow, that's incredible. And when you heard some of these stories, but what was your response?
Before we came into the production, we knew a little bit about the reputation that ballet had, and that there were problematic issues that emerged from within the industry. But I think what we didn't realize was just how structural they seemed to be, how widespread these issues seem to be. And as I always say, that doesn't mean that there aren't great companies out there, but it means that a lot of the stories that we heard were from dancers who had similar experiences to the ones that became our characters. And we felt that actually our characters were incredible individuals with such huge talent and such courage to come through what they had and to form a company and to share all of that with us. It was incredibly brave what they did. But what we also realized is that their stories reflected the stories of so many dancers. And that came as a real surprise to us. I think the levels of toxicity, mistreatment, abuse within the industry, and how commonplace they were, and how much dancers just came to accept them. I think the acceptance was almost as shocking as the stories. The fact that people told us things and they went, yeah, well, that's just what you have to do if you're going to survive in ballet school. And that really shocked us, and it made us realize that we had to tell this story.
And sometimes it takes someone outside of the industry to reflect back what someone has been through within the industry, and then they realize, oh yeah, no, this isn't normal. This is abuse, and actually putting a name to it is such a powerful thing, because for too long, especially in the ballet industry, it's been a normalized standard thing to accept abuse. And so I'm definitely one to be using that word and naming it, and educating families of young dancers as what to expect on ethical training, especially in classical ballet. So how did the dancers describe the internal conflict of leaving institutions that shaped their identities?
Yeah, I think that was something that came through a lot, because I think that's something that actually exacerbates the problem within the ballet world, is the fact that the jobs are so scarce, and that ballerinas have committed so much of their lives and so much of their identities. It's hard for them to know who they are beyond ballet, because these schools take them on at such a young age and really define most of their waking hours. What we recognize straight away, and I think it's really important to say that, by the time that we reached these dancers, they'd already formed Ballet de Barcelona. They were already working with Chase. They were already in this very different environment. So we didn't witness anything, nor was it our intention to witness anything. What we wanted to do was start the narrative part of our journey from that point of hope, that point of belief that they could change both their circumstances and perhaps influence the ballet world more broadly in some way. But what we did witness was so much collaboration and confirmation from the dancers and experiences that they had had. So even when the company started, there was around 12 company members and then around the same number of trainees. But across those 24 people, different ages, different countries, different backgrounds, and all of them confirmed similar levels of control and manipulation and struggle that they faced when they were placed into ballet environments. And I think they also recognized the fact that they had given so much of their lives to ballet, and they had really defined themselves by ballet, that they felt trapped as well. So no matter what levels of abuse they were suffering, whether that was body shaming that led to disordered eating, whether it was racism or transphobia, whether it was sexual abuse, whatever it might be, the dancers felt that they had no other space to go, because this is who they were, and they had to take the bad with the good, and they didn't realize that there was alternatives. And also, because the mistreatment was so systemic, a lot of dancers were really gaslit by it as well, because they thought, well, I'm not being treated as badly as someone else, so therefore I'm not a victim. And it's something that Lisa actually says in the film. She says that it was really hard for me to say I was a victim. We're told not to complain. We're told that it's tough. We see people who have it worse, and we're scared for so many reasons to say we're victims, and we're scared even to believe that we're victims as well.
Yeah, I relate to that. It took me years actually, and it is important that the wonderful dancers in the company of Ballet de Barcelona, and that you are creating a film like this to really help evolve an industry that desperately needs it. So, I mean, if that was happening in a government school system, would it be happening? It wouldn't. Why are we putting up with it in ballet?
Absolutely. And those are the questions that just didn't get asked. I think that's so true, because people, particularly young people who will accept things if they feel conventional, and they're told, well, this is the way that things are, it's really, really hard for them to challenge. And of course, these schools are in big cities, often away from where people's parents are. These kids are institutionalized as well. And soon, very, very abusive behavior can become the norm.
Is there any responsibility that parents take in this? Like, is there any conversations around parental guidance from the dancers when they were young?
It's such a hard question to answer because I think you would never want to point any blame at parents who are really just
No.
trying to fulfill their kids' dreams and often a huge financial burden and time burden to themselves and already concerned because it is an unstable and insecure career path. So I think that parents do it with the best of intentions, but I think that you know, if we can just raise awareness, and our film is focused around adults, but with their recollections of their childhoods, and they're not going to ask the questions because kids are desperate to fit in, they're desperate to
Mm.
achieve, and particularly when it's something like dance, they'll do almost anything to conform. So I think for parents to recognize that you can't expect the kids to ask, and you probably can't expect the kids to tell you what's going on
Yeah.
either. So you've got to be so proactive about it. And probably a lot of that happens before you even let your kid go to that school. Again, that's so hard because if your kid gets accepted to a really famous, really prestigious ballet school, you don't want to break their heart or turn them down, and you think you
Yeah.
might never get this opportunity again. It's so difficult. But I think awareness and dialogue, open dialogue from the start, are the foundations of what parents can do.
And being that safe space so that children and teens can feel comfortable to talk about things if they come up. It is difficult for sure. And so how did the dancers articulate the long-term impact of those environments on their well-being and sense of self?
Different dancers responded in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at one of our characters, Stanka, it had such a profound effect on her to the extent that her whole life was connected to that body shaming and that abuse that she had suffered. Every aspect of her day to day was affected by it. We had no idea that pirouettes were such a significant and obsessive thing for ballet dancers, but
Yeah.
she had somehow connected the body shame to her double pirouettes. And anytime that she couldn't do a double pirouette, it took her right back. You could see her just slipping back into that space and back into those. Even she was an incredible dancer in so many ways, but just that one thing was such a trigger. And I think that you notice really physical triggers within the dance space that took them back into that time. And also just so much is suppressed that
Mm.
when we were talking to Lisa, the most revealing and shocking things that Lisa shared with us, it was nearly at the end of production before she told us about them. And because even though we had spent so much time with Lisa and we had such a strong and trusting relationship with her, there were some things that she still didn't feel that she could share. And it was really only when she thought, this film might wrap up without me saying these things that she felt like she had to
Wow.
with Chase. Even though Chase is the director and was leading these other dancers, in Chase's final interview with me, um, it was only then that he brought up his own anorexia and his own battles with eating. And with Stanka, not only did she not bring them up with us until we'd spent a lot of time with her, she'd never brought some of these things up with anyone at all. And in her interview, I think we realized that we were witnessing not just an interview, but a truly life-changing moment for her as well as she found the courage to speak up about what had happened to her. And it's something that she often goes back to when we talk about it is the fact that the film gave her a new kind of freedom and perspective on who she could be.
It's interesting, the process of speaking up. It's liberating and yet sometimes can be slightly re-traumatizing. Did you find that was maybe happening? In my experience, it's incredibly necessary and healthy, but there is that process. I know for me, I went through after season 2 of this podcast a week of like, oh my gosh, did I overshare? And it's like, no, I didn't. I didn't even tell the whole story. But it was a little bit, totally triggering. Did any of the dancers have that happen?
Yeah, that actually that happened quite a lot, and it's something that we had to just be totally patient and just create as much space as we possibly could for the dancers
Yeah.
there because in Lisa's case, she told us about what she had been through and said that she wanted it to be in the film. And then we did an interview and she was incredible in that interview. And then a couple of weeks later, we were scheduled to go with her to return to her home in Belgium and to kind of develop that area of the story. And she started having a huge panic about that happening.
Mm.
But it's completely natural. It's
Yeah.
and in the end, we went to Belgium, and that was amazing. And we had a chance to speak to her mum, and she shared a lot as well. And Lisa actually created a piece of dance to represent her journey while she was there in Belgium, and it, it was it was so empowering and for us and to feel that's what where she could get to. But that didn't mean that there weren't ebbs and flows in that
Yep.
relationship, and we understood every single one of those doubts.
Yeah. Wow, what an incredibly powerful process. And you've got it all on film,
Well,
documentary.
yeah, and we are just so grateful to the dancers
Oh,
because it was their process. We were just
yeah.
so lucky to be there at that time, and a time when they were ready to fight back and they were ready to, I think you used the word agency at the start of this, to,
Yeah.
to, to really find their agency and find their voices. And we felt just so blessed to be part of that.
That's awesome. Well done. What did you observe in the early days of the forming of the new company, particularly around the psychological safety and leadership?
That was really fascinating, something that we felt really grateful to capture because Chase, who took on this role as director, it's his first ever directorial role. He himself was a survivor of abuse within the ballet industry, and he desperately wanted to do things differently and desperately wanted to protect the dancers, and at the same time had no experience of running a ballet company and no experience of putting on a full length nutcracker or any production for that matter. And
Mm.
what we witnessed was him having to really try and balance the creative drive that was necessary to do that, to create this piece of theatre, and to try and learn everything as he was going about that aspect, but also about supporting the dancers and getting the best out of them, but also trying to nurture them through their struggles and their past traumas, and to know when to speak and when to share and when not to, and also to really witness the dancers themselves, the likes of Stanka and Lisa and Rayo, even though they were incredibly young, 21 and 22 at the time that they did this and that they were part of forming this company, for them to take on such leadership roles with the other dancers and really take a responsibility suddenly. Yeah, they were dancing and they were taking on their roles, but the company had to make it, and there was nothing else in place to ensure that they would. So they had to really get in there, support other dancers, as well as trying to work through their own issues and find support from others as well. So those dynamics were really, really
Yeah.
complex, but really fascinating to witness as we filmed the early stages of that company coming together.
What did you notice about the relationship between trauma, the body, and the act of dancing during filming the process?
Great question. Yeah. I think we were really, really privileged to get to witness that so firsthand in the making of this film. Because what I also found fascinating was the fact that ballet had caused these dancers a lot of harm, a lot of suffering,
Mm.
but it also created for them some of their moments of greatest joy in their entire lives.
Mm.
And you get this question time and again. I got to, at filmmaking forums and labs and things like that, people saying, well, why don't they just quit? And I was like, it's not as easy as that. This is the essence of these people. This is so much part of their being that quitting isn't an option. The dance is everything, or it's certainly a huge part of their lives and a huge part of where they find joy and where they find self. So it was really crucial to recognize that not only had their trauma been caused through ballet or through the ballet industry, but that ballet and dance could be a source of resistance and recovery and response to that trauma. And that even though dance had given them this pain and this injustice, dance could be the solution for them. And
Mm.
actually, something that we did with all of our principal characters was we asked them to choreograph a piece of dance to represent their journey. And
Yeah.
these set pieces come at various points in the film between certain key scenes when they're having actuality struggles. Will then come right out of the studio to a completely kind of dreamlike sequence where we see
Mm.
these dancers in their fullest and most essential flow, just expressing themselves through dance. And what we witnessed, that the body is an incredible tool for expressing all of the emotions from trauma right through to joy, resistance, and recovery. And that was such an exciting element from a filmmaker point of view, and a storytelling point of view, to realize that these dancers could tell you their story, express their struggles, express their joy through their bodies and through their movements. And we just love filming those.
Oh, that's so special. What a beautiful healing process for many of us dancers that have been through similar things that can get that healing by watching the documentary. That's really special.
I really hope so. I really hope that this documentary can ensure that dancers can start their own process, and that, watching Unbound is just the first step. And even if they don't think about the film itself for more than a few hours after they've watched it, it can spark something that makes them realize that their recovery is possible.
And you know what I find as well? I've got lots of non-dance friends. They love watching dance films and various books and things about dance that have had this sort of theme and element to it, but they've loved watching it and been able to personalize it within their own world and their own. And so, yeah, I'm sure it will lend to the non-dancer as well, however that may land for them.
Absolutely. I think what we realized quite early on in the process is that non-dancers are fascinated by dance. I think it's one of the most primal human pursuits, and even those of us who can't dance, and I would include myself very much in that category, we're incredibly curious and fascinated about how people get there. And
Yeah.
also, there are so many elements that feel related to life. We all struggle with one form of creative pursuit or another. We all strive to achieve something that feels special, and dance and ballet lays that process so bare, and it's
Mhm.
so visceral and so visual when it's being worked through the studio to the stage, that I think people can really connect with that, whatever their own hopes and goals and struggles in life are.
Yeah, absolutely. Were there any ethical considerations that came up when you were documenting the film of like personal and vulnerable material, and how did you navigate your way through that?
Yeah, I think for us, consent is something that can exist on paper, and you can sign all the forms, but really beyond that, I think real consent exists, and it is about winning trust of the dancers in that space. Because no matter whether someone's signed a form or not, if they don't feel truly represented, truly spoken for, and truly comfortable with what we've done, we never want to screen that film. So
Mm.
there's a huge amount of work that goes into that to ensure that our protagonists in whatever film we might make, particularly with a vulnerable, a very sensitive subject like this,
Mm.
um, feel that sense of security in what we do. I think something that we do a lot is we spend a lot of time there without the cameras. And before we start, we don't go in with a single camera or a single microphone. And that's really important. We go in there and we also make it clear that we're there to learn. We don't really know anything about their world, no matter what we think we might know. We go in there with our learning gears engaged, and we want to listen, and we want to make sure that we are starting to understand before we even think about hitting record. Because particularly in a place like a dance studio, where I know the dancers they're used to it, but it is a very it's a very vulnerable space as well. There are mirrors everywhere.
Yeah.
There people who are trying things and failing at them, like you have to do in order to reach that incredibly high level where they're being critiqued all the time, and they want those critiques where they're pushing themselves all the time. It's a very exposing place. So we really wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable with our presence. And from there on, we wanted to make sure that we were clear about what we were trying to do. And I
Yeah.
think that just by being upfront about our intentions for the film and where we wanted the film to go and what we wanted the film to say, we managed to gain a lot of trust. But crucially, I think the most important thing in that dialogue was asking them what they wanted the film to say. Because we had ideas of what we thought the message could be, but really the messages came from our characters and from the members of that company. And that's where I feel that we should always try and work when we're thinking about the ethics of a film. Can we provide space for a voice for those that want to share something?
I just loved hearing you say all of that. And I don't know if you've had that conscious thought that you have provided a container of safety for healing to be possible just by the way you have actually demonstrated the way you work. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Mm.
Well, I mean, thank you for saying that. I mean, that's very, very kind of you to say. I think, you know, we might have played a small part, but the vast majority of the credit has to go to the dancers because, you know, that it was they created that. Without that space that they created for each other, there wouldn't have
Yeah.
been a space for us to step into. So I hope that we managed it in a way that was respectful and safe and supportive for them. But I have to always say, you know, it was them that really created that in the first instance.
But they wouldn't open up if they didn't feel safe. So well done. Yeah, no, that's really
Thank you so
important.
much.
So yeah, to you and your team. Mm.
Well, I mean, and I think I have to acknowledge as well here, you know, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, we work with emerging talent. They come on and they work on our productions with us. So it was a lot of quite young filmmakers, perhaps without that much experience, who entered that realm as well. And the level of respect that they instantly showed, the way that they managed those situations, we were just so impressed by our really young team. I think they identified with the dancers. You know, of course, they hadn't faced traumas to the same level, but they were young people trying to find their place in the world in that insecure career environment. And there was real connection between the dancers and our team members, you know, of all our crew, all of our trainees. So they deserve a lot of credit for going into a really tough situation and handling it amazingly well.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, if they're listening, well done. Yeah.
I'm sure they
And
will be. I'm sure they'll listen in.
yeah. And after everything you've learned and from the dancers and witnessed from their stories, what do you hope studio owners, teachers, and parents can take away from the film regarding culture and student well-being?
It's a great question. You know, I don't want to claim that our film can, you know, instantly change the ballet world, and I think it's only a tiny little drop in a vast ocean of dance. But what I hope it can do is that it can start conversations in a non-judgmental and non-personal way, so that any parent or caregiver or even student themselves or person who is working at a studio or director can use the film as a reference point to ask non-threatening questions, to start non-threatening dialogues, and just to explore practice without
Mm.
having to point any fingers or deal with anything that feels personal. I I really hope that the film can just begin a dialogue and let people reference the characters, references the struggles and the courage that Lisa and Stanka and Chase and Rayo showed, and witness the methods that Ballet de Barcelona utilized, and propose things or discuss things or share ideas based on those. Because I think, you know, changes at a structural level are important and rule books are important and codes of conduct are important. But I think those things only work if there is a genuine culture shift that is based on sharing and listening, and that there are
Mm.
conversations where there is an emotional agreement as well. I think that's what we witnessed in Ballet de Barcelona. Not a list of rules on the wall, but an agreement at an emotional level where they said, we're doing things differently here, and this
Yeah.
is why. And I hope that the film can encourage that level of shift in culture and in practice. And if it can do, even if it's in one studio, even if it's for one director, then it will feel like a job that was really, really worthwhile.
Yeah. And are there any other structural changes that you feel from your perspective are needed for ballet training to become more humane and sustainable?
I think it's difficult for me as an outsider to talk about structural changes in terms of whether they are, like, as I say, official rule books
Yeah.
or anything like that. But uh, I think that if ballet companies could simply have conversations on day one of each kind of new production calendar year and just say, you know, what do we want? What are we worried about? Here's what you can do if you don't feel comfortable. Here's what you can do if you don't feel safe. Here's someone that you can speak to if you don't want to speak to me. To change the the dynamics so that everyone felt that they had a safe person to approach, a safe place to go,
Yeah.
that it wasn't always hierarchical. I think if there was a way that, you know, ballet companies and ballet schools could in some way initiate every season with a conversation that genuinely led to a sense of security and comfort for dancers. I know it's a big ask, and I know that
It shouldn't be really though,
it's a
right?
lot. No, no. And for dancers to believe in that and to believe that
Mm.
having heard those words and spoken themselves, they do feel safe and comfortable. I
Yeah.
think that that would be a huge change and a huge structural step forward.
Yeah. And after completing Unbound, what questions do you still carry about the dance world and its trajectory?
You know, making Unbound definitely created more questions than answers for me. And I think
Yeah.
that is, despite, you know, being 4.5 years in the film and now more than a year taking it around festivals. And I actually, I think it's created multiple questions for me. But what I'm really fascinated about right now is seeing the questions that it creates in others. So, you know, up until now, the film has been at film festivals, and it's been watched mainly by film enthusiasts and documentary lovers. And now that it's hit the platforms, is going to be the time where it is watched by dancers.
Mm.
So I think my biggest question is what questions dancers are going to have. What new debates is it going to raise? What are we going to get into our DMs and Instagram for the
Yeah.
page? What sort of messages are we going to hear from dancers? What is their response going to be to the film? Because we've been very, very lucky with the critical response from, you know, from film critics and from the cinema community, and those at Ballet de Barcelona have been incredibly positive, and all of our characters have been so supportive of it. But my biggest question is, what's the wider dance community going to make of this film? And I hope that that leads to a lot of comments, but also that it leads to a lot of questions as well, so that someone else can
Yeah.
pick up the baton, whether it's through podcasts or another film or another form of media, that we keep exploring this dance world for all that can still change and for all that is wonderful and incredible and joyous about it as well.
Beautiful. Now, where can we find the film?
So the best places to find the film are on Amazon Prime and on Apple TV, and that is worldwide except for Spain, as we have a co-production deal, and it's going to be out in Spain early 26. But if you're anywhere else in the world, Apple TV and Amazon are the places that you can find Unbound. If you follow Unbound Ballerinas documentary on Instagram, on Otoxia Productions on Instagram, we've got regular updates on the film there. We've got outtakes, we've got snippets. And also, as I said, we're really, really keen to hear from dancers and hear from people in the dance world who have watched the film. So those are the places to go to get involved with the film.
Yeah, feedback is important and good. So, people, if you watch it, make sure you follow them on Insta and let John and his team know what you thought of the film. That's so exciting. Oh, and I just wish you the best of luck. What a wonderful project.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate the interview. It's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you.
Oh, likewise.